have been working for about the last 10 years on a project in San Francisco that at least in United States terms, is probably one of the most ambitious transit-based developments, at least that I know of in our country. As many of you know, particularly those of you who live there, public transit is still not a preferred mode of travel. We're still very much cooked on cars, but we're seeing that kind of dynamic gradually change. And when the dynamic is changing in concert with real estate development, then you see that change have real weight and real power. In San Francisco, 10 years ago, we won a competition to completely redesign the new transit station, but that was also combined with a massive revitalization of literally the core of the city. The transit center that we inherited was this very big building. It had about a 5-block footprint, a little over 5.5 acres, 2.5 hectare footprint. It was all part of a developer designer competition. Our sponsor was Hines from Houston. And part of the arrangement was that the developers were not only going to propose the solution for the station, they were also going to offer money for this piece of property here that would eventually become 1,300,000 square foot, roughly 1,100 foot tall skyscraper, the tallest in San Francisco and protected as the tallest in San Francisco. So this was genuinely a public-private enterprise from the very beginning. Now, what happens in 10 years, and I'm sure everybody in this room realizes this, in 10 years you can go through at least one complete economic cycle. In some cases you can go through 2 economic cycles, and we absolutely did that. When the project was first proposed in 2007, San Francisco was very bullish. It was just on the verge of a great spurt of growth. And then in 2008 and 9, the bottom dropped out of the whole country's economy, but particularly hard hit were the Silicon Valley firms. So we went from just kind of massive optimism to the depths of depression. I'm not going to talk about any specific numbers, it's all public record, but I will say that the offer for that one valuable piece of property, which became Salesforce's headquarters, roughly reduced by 2/3 in that period of time. Fortunately, our developer clients were able to renegotiate and get the building built. So everything came back together. Everything came back together with this just enormous burst of commercial and technological energy. But this is the kind of place that we inherited. The old Bay Bridge ramps that brought buses into the transit center were really killing the city. They were a huge blight. They were occupying some of the most valuable property. And you'll see as this little animation develops, much of that property, when those ramps came down, became available. Some of this animation precedes the transit center. Roughly the parts that you're seeing right now were already underway or partly being built. But then transit center itself, when it came down, the center of the slide, all of those bus ramps came down. All of the land around the transit center was made completely available. All of that land was owned by the Transit Center Authority. So in theory, that money also went to support the transit center. Now, what happens when you go from a bus to a boom, again, as all of you in this room knows, optimism returns, but so do high prices. All of a sudden, all of these private sector towers were competing for construction dollars with the transit center itself. So the entire dynamic reversed. All of a sudden, we had a building that was pushing twice its original budget, not because the program had changed, but simply because the economics had changed. So just in that whole period of time, in that 10 years alone, is an entire story about the economic life cycles of the downtown of cities. Fortunately, San Francisco had planned. and they had genuinely planned for a truly mixed-use development. The Salesforce Tower, which you see here, is the only pure office building in this group, and that's by intention. Every other building, every other new building is either residential or a mixed-use program, so that the transit center and the transit center district could be said to be a truly live-work environment. Part of our proposal was to put a 5.5-acre fully accessible public park on the top of the transit center. We realized that this density was coming, high-rise buildings were coming. The fifth facade, the roof of the building, was going to be as important as the facades on the street level. So we worked very, very hard with Peter Walker to design a full-fledged urban park, much, much larger than any urban park that previously existed in San Francisco. Now, this is a park that you can get to and use whether you're using the transit center or not. So it is genuinely a public amenity. The transit center in section is rather straightforward. It begins at the street level. This is the same level as Mission Street. Mission Street is a primary address. The centerpiece is what we're calling the Grand Hall. The Grand Hall is roughly the height of Grand Central Station, but it is also structural. It's what we term a light column. It's actually holding up a significant part of the building, but it's also allowing natural light to come all the way deeply into the building, down to the high-speed rail platforms. The second level above is the bus deck that brings all 13 of the regional buses into the building. The park that we've proposed is on the top of that. One level below grade, this is all phase 2, is the public concourse and waiting area for the trains that will eventually be here, both California High-Speed Rail and Caltrain. So all of this box was built at one time. It's all ready to go. It's simply waiting for the hardest thing of all, and that is the state politics of California to somehow sort themselves out and do the right thing. The park, I'll spend just a couple of minutes talking about it because it's such a unique aspect of what we're doing. The park was seen as was much of the building, was seen as an opportunity to create a kind of educational, didactic aspect about the landscape and the ecology of this part of the Bay Area. There are literally 12 sub-parks, sub-environments within this park, each one of which is talking about the various sub-environments you can find in the Bay Area. So Pete Walker did a superb job of really filling this with just an entire collection of the most extraordinarily beautiful gardens and relevant gardens to the Bay Area. This, of course, is also key to the stormwater management in the building. It's key to water filtration. So the park itself goes well beyond just simply being a visual amenity. It's really part of the sustainability story. The exterior of the building, I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, is a punched aluminum wall in a pattern that I'll go into in a second. If you want to see a larger blow-up, please visit our room D on this floor. We have a large current photograph of what the wall looks like. But suffice it to say, our initial intention was to make this as friendly and welcoming a building as possible. I think one of the best examples of how not to do this is the Port Authority bus terminal in New York, which is in the process of actually killing its neighborhood, not reviving its neighborhood. So it tells you how tricky and delicate transit-based buildings can be if they're not handled well. Art intentions, as well as the issues of science, even mathematics in the Bay Area, are a really important and very fertile ground to build on. We hit upon an idea in skinning the exterior of the building that we think is tremendously appropriate to the Bay Area. If you can imagine, this is a wall that is curved in section and curved in plan. Each of the panels that enclose the wall is a trapezoid. Each trapezoid has a kind of an odd exterior condition. There are no right angles in these trapezoids. Early on, we hit upon the idea of using Dr. Roger Penrose's pattern. Penrose is a professor at Oxford University. We've known him for quite some time. The Penrose patterns have always been of tremendous interest to me. And because of this oddly shaped trapezoidal pattern, we realized we couldn't use a conventional punch. It couldn't just be, for instance, a grid of circles. It needed to be what's being termed an aperiodic pattern. On the left of the slide is a periodic pattern. You see that it repeats itself. Penrose's aperiodic pattern appears to repeat, but it actually does not. And what that allows us to do when we use it in our wall is, as you can see, look at the sides, look at that side as compared to that side. The tops and the bottoms are also, have nothing to do with each other. So the Penrose pattern allows us to skin this very complex surface. It allows us to have to deal with odd and anomalous conditions. We went to Oxford to visit Dr. Penrose, and we said that we'd like to use his pattern. It's perfect for this enclosure system. It'll be punched so it helps the natural ventilation of the building. And we said, and we're prepared to pay for it. We have an art program. We can give you some money for it. How much would you like? And he said, well, I don't want any money at all. I only want one thing. It's got to be perfect. And he then personally came several times to San Francisco to look at this pattern extremely carefully, to be absolutely certain that it is perfect and that it is seamless from one end to the other. If you go into our project room here, you can get a close-up view, but the real issue is this pattern is made of two rhombuses, a large rhombus and a small rhombus. The pattern had to actually jump those gaps in such a way that it was continuous. Now, that was an enormously difficult problem. Took us a couple of years to really figure it out, and then another year to figure out a way to build it at a reasonable cost, but we did all of that. And Roger and his wife, Vanessa, come to San Francisco. She's actually got a better eye for perfection than even he does. So, but what it's resulted in is a very, very graceful building that crosses the streets quite beautifully. The streets of San Francisco are completely woven into the transit center, as well as city life is brought into the lower levels of the transit center. And in the evening, we're lighting the large columns, the structural columns from inside, so that the laciness of the Penrose pattern is what you really read. Probably the best way to understand everything that we're doing is just this short animation. It literally shows you the size and scope of the project, as I say, 5 blocks long. There is a funicular cab that will bring you from Mission Square, which is located here, up to the park. The park has a dozen ways to get up and down. We can easily accommodate several thousand people. Our exiting capacity is at 7,000 people, so we need to be careful not to exceed that. But we do know that we can at least have very large celebrations, actually several different things going at once. Here you also see one of the other light columns. As I say, it's a fully accessible park. We're imagining this being an amenity for families. You actually do not have to be using the buses or trains to access the park. Several of the buildings being built adjacent to the park are connecting by bridges. You're 70 feet in the air. At the street level, there's 200,000 square feet of 2 levels of retail. We're imagining these being San Francisco retailers. San Francisco, as many of you know, has built this whole culture of food. It's very authentic. It's wonderful, wonderful food. We already have many, many people lined up to take shops at the base of the building. On Mission Street is one of the grand entrances. This is the lower level, the lobby of the Salesforce Tower. The Mission Street Plaza is here. That allows you to get off of buses. Salesforce lobby is here, and then it allows you to take the funicular up to the park itself. The funicular, of course, is not a very high capacity ride, but we're imagining it's going to be one of the most popular tourist attractions in the city, being built in Switzerland. So it's really quite a wonderful device. This is the main lobby, the Grand Hall. Escalators take you from the Grand Hall all the way to the stairs. I don't think they're Schindler escalators. I'm sorry, because we had a strict Buy American policy on this building. We fought for it. At the bus deck level, again, the orientation is very simple. The buses are very easy to spot. It's a very safe way to get on and off of buses. At the lower train level, again, we're bringing light all the way in from above, as you can see here. There will be both Caltrain and California high-speed rail. The intention ultimately is that this is the San Francisco terminus for all of the California high-speed rail. And your friend can come from Los Angeles for the weekend, and it's a very easy ride. All of the grayish buildings you see here are new land that has been made available by the reconfiguring of the bus ramps. The Salesforce Tower at 1,070 feet is permanently protected as the tallest building in the city. Art was a huge aspect of what we're doing. Part of the way we're, as I say, humanizing infrastructure is being sure that there is something delightful to look at literally every day of the week. Jenny Holzer is doing a piece. Julie Chan, a local San Francisco artist, is doing the terrazzo floors. We have sculpture in various places. Jamie Carpenter is doing a big piece on the outside. So art at a huge public scale was a significant part of what we're doing. You'll see the Jenny Holzer word piece in just a few minutes. This is it, and it's, sorry. I'm sorry, I clicked right past it. Jenny Holzer's piece wraps the upper level of the skylight at that point. It is about 6 months from being finished. We're imagining that the Transit Center will open in spring of next year. It's already looking really quite wonderful. The park is going in. The tower and the Transit Center are already adding a level of kind of civility and finish to the streets of San Francisco. As many of you know, the spaces underneath these kinds of buildings can be particularly difficult spaces to design. But our idea was to bring light and air and safety to reverse the tendency for those to become kind of the lost, wasted spaces of the project. The wall itself is really quite wonderful. It's manufactured in suburban Chicago, held in place by a very ingenious structural system. Very, very, very cost-effective way to enclose the building, and as I say, allows for the building to be fully naturally ventilated. And already it's starting to present some surprising and wonderful urban conditions. This is where the big ramp was in the second or third slide that I showed you earlier. And you can see also these kind of wonderful accidental relationships to existing buildings. It's clearly a contemporary structure, but it has a kind of friendliness and a kind of scale that seems to fit very, very nicely with the city. And the park is going in. The park is already super popular. Pieces of it are open. Pieces are not really publicly open, but pieces are already being used. And here you can see the Salesforce Tower also just about finished. A view of the Penrose Pattern and Pete Walker's landscape on top. From inside the bus deck, the air flows, it's light, it's airy, it's open. It's a very, very attractive and surprising space in and of itself. And then the Grand Hall is just about finished. The Jenny Holzer piece wraps the top of the Grand Hall. And this is an image just from a couple of days ago that will show you how you come in over the Bay Bridge. Buses will enter the building in the lower right-hand corner of the slide. We worked with Arup extensively on all of the infrastructure. We worked with Thornton Tomasetti on much of the structural engineering, WSP. We were the prime contractor with 23 subcontractors under us. And as I say, it's taken 10 years to really do it. That's the bus ramp coming in. That's the turnaround for the buses at the very top. The buses now come into the transit center here. So it's a cable stay bridge, a really dramatic piece of structural engineering by Arup. We come into the transit center. You can see the Penrose wall here. At the bus deck level below and the park above, there is a restaurant. There is a cinema, an outdoor cinema. There are light columns that you can see here and here, and you see much of the landscape is already in place. The Salesforce Tower is almost fully leased. It's very interesting because Salesforce connects with a bridge here. Facebook has just taken this building. It also connects with a bridge. And just off of the slide, we're now designing another tower that will connect with a bridge. So already the idea of it being fully connected, fully accessible, is coming into play. This is about a week ago. The top is just about finished. It has already become a very, very powerful, very simple, elegant symbol for the new San Francisco. You can also see here the extent of the transit center just below. The bus ramp you just saw a few minutes ago is here. And of course, it's very foggy in San Francisco most mornings. But part of the idea was to have a building that has the kind of clarity and strength that it makes it instantly recognizable, and we hope for a very long time to be a much respected and a much loved building. So thank you very much.